Helldiving is best enjoyed with friends.
Kick it back. It's ticking. It's ticking.
Go.
But sometimes you'll want to test a loadout, grow your skills, or just unwind in a solo match. Meaning that to become the best helldiver you can be, you should know how to handle yourself whenever you find your backup has disappeared. My name is Commissar Kai, and today I'll be showing y'all everything you need to know about how to solo the map like an expert. We'll cover everything from basic skills to crafting loadouts, but we'll start with, why should you play solo? Helldivers is a co-op shooter after all. Going through a mission alone means there's no one to watch your back and no one to share a laugh with when something stupid happens. God damn it, Roscoe, stop killing me! I need to not die now. This is the end of the mission. Please. The game is not designed around solo play, so oftentimes in your lone wolf adventures, you'll encounter situations that feel downright unfair. Like when a patrol with 24,000 health spawns out of nowhere, or you run into a base that has 3 war striders, putting you through the rinse cycle of freedom. Playing solo adds challenge, but doing it too much can suck the fun out of the liberating experience. I don't jump in a hell pod to sweat. That said, playing with yourself has a couple of benefits. What? Playing without squad mates does have a couple of benefits. The first being that even in team matches, sometimes you'll get cut off from your squad and need to rely on your own strength to finish a mission or relink back up with your fellow helldivers. Polishing your skills in solo missions will help you feel more confident in these situations. The second is that restrictions breed creativity, which is why I do a lot of stupid challenges. And playing solo heaps a bunch of restrictions onto your loadout. This forces you to learn to make streamlined loadouts without any dead weight. Finally, taking on the game in different ways not only helps keep the game fun, but it also makes you better at processing renewable resources for Super Earth. Basically, soloing in moderation is a fun and exciting experience that can teach you things that are much harder to learn when you have the benefit of teammates. So let's move on to which skills you'll need to get the most out of a solo dive. There's a couple of general skills you'll want to polish if you're going to be John Soloing your way through a map without your typical furry backup. The first and most important is time management. Whether you're stealthing through a bot mission or single-handedly taking on the Terminated Swarm, the mission clock is always going to be the primary antagonist on these missions, especially if you're going for a full clear. To manage your time well, the main question you should be asking yourself is always, do I have time to fight this? Taking unnecessary fights runs out the clock on your Kessel run, meaning you might end your mission on a whimper as you watch Pelican 1 head back for another case of Cerveza Cristal. I can see it, Pelican 1 now. Don't do it! Oh, god damn it. If you do need to fight for whatever reason, be like John Solo and commit to it before the actual fight gets started. Call in your sentries, prep your eagles, and spam your grenades to clear an outpost or a side objective as quickly as possible. But if the situation gets out of control, and it occasionally will no matter how good you are at liberating, you need to be able to identify when to back out and relocate to another objective. For example, I needed to collect the SSSD before heading on to the final part of the primary, but a bug breach spawned directly in the path I needed to take. I knew I couldn't fight this head on without risking a death spiral or running out of time, so I tossed out a gas strike to slow the bugs down before heading to a nearby shrieker nest that I had already destroyed. I used this terrain feature to break line of sight with the bugs, allowing me to circle back to the other side of the primary and grab the SSSD. Refining this skill takes time and requires you to pay attention to multiple things at once, so don't get frustrated if it takes you a little bit to really nail it down. Even I occasionally get wrapped up in delivering righteous liberty to the enemy and lose track of time. Look at that. Oh my god. Did I need to do that? No, but I wanted to. Another skill you'll need to become John Solo is keeping track of your surroundings. When you're stuck in against the enemy, it's important to remember key pieces of cover, the locations of objectives, and where you left the resupply. Juggling all this information under pressure can be difficult, but I have a few tricks you can use to get better at it. First, you'll want to tie that feeling of panic to looking at your map. Whenever you feel overwhelmed, duck behind cover, throw out a distraction like a sentry or a grenade, and check your map. This will give you clues on how to unscrew yourself from whatever crappy situation you tripped into. Look for breaks in the enemy formation, other objectives you can bounce off of, or any tools lying around that you can use to get out of your predicament. Next, you'll want to train your brain to focus, no matter what you're doing. Like here, I have 2 shrieker nests to destroy, and I know that it's going to take me a while with my autocannon. After clearing out a couple, I felt the ADHD dragging me off in a bad direction. But then that Helldiver Ultra instinct kicked in and told me to look behind me. And wouldn't you know it, there's a hunter patrol. I felt like the spider sense went off. I knew there was a patrol creeping up on me. If I had just zoned out completely like I was sitting through a reading class, I would have been dogpiled from behind, wondering why in the hell the game spawns patrols out of nowhere. When in reality, I was just making a bunch of noise, attracting patrols to come over and check out the sounds of freedom. Finally, use your resupply as a rallying point. You're alone, so you can double dip into your supplies as much as you want. But even when you're bone dry on supplies, you'll only ever need 2 boxes to completely fill your pockets. Meaning every time you call on the resupply, which should basically be every time it's off cooldown, you have a mountain of ordnance waiting in reserve for whenever things get too hot. The last skill to polish before we get into the specifics against each faction is mastering your weapons. Contrary to popular belief, there are very few weapons or stratagems that are just plain weak. Nearly everything in this game can be useful if you know how to synergize your loadouts. Playing solo requires a synergized loadout because you are missing out on 3 extra primaries, 3 extra sets of grenades, and 12 additional stratagems. So there should be 0 dead weight in a solo loadout. This takes time to learn and refine, but the easiest way to do it is after every mission, ask yourself 2 questions. Which pieces of kit did you rarely, if ever, use? And what obstacles did you encounter? If you're bringing kit that you only used a couple of times per mission, minus things like mechs or orbital lasers, then you didn't need to bring it. Sub those weapons out with other things until you find what clicks for you. Likewise, if you're consistently struggling with particular objectives or enemy types, consider bringing a tool specifically to overcome that particular challenge. A good example is War Striders. If these are giving you trouble, make sure you have an extra source of anti-tank to lean on when the game decides to spawn freaking 3 of them at a mortar emplacement. Liberty, damn it, these things are annoying. Speaking of War Striders, let's get into the specifics against each faction, starting with the bots. Bots as a faction have low intelligence, like all enemies of humanity, high power and defense stats, middling mobility and HP, and low stealth and perception. Their weapons hit hard and nearly the entire faction is ranged, meaning that you'll need to rely on cover substantially more than against any other faction. But there's a few things you can do to make soloing the Clankers substantially easier. Because the bots put all of their computing power into hate and freedom and prosperity, they're too stupid to make proper use of their ranged firepower. They won't hunker down in advantageous positions, they don't use flanking attacks, and they don't coordinate their strikes. Instead, every bot with tracks or legs will mindlessly walk towards you as they fire. You can abuse this fact by using corners to get them to line up. Lining them up accomplishes 3 important things. It makes them easier to shoot in the face, they friendly fire each other like it's a competition, and they limit the amount of scrap metal that can actually pose a danger to you. This is why I love my M90A so much against this faction.
I love you.
I know.
I'll just wait around a corner and blast whatever shows its face. Hell, I killed an entire bot drop with just Randy and my beloved M90A by abusing the bot's pathing. And every time I blasted a Clanker in the face, I got giddy with excitement. Just bring your pocket verdict for a quick swap and you'll be shocked at the amount of scrap you can handle with just these 2 weapons. If anyone sees all this footage I'm showing you and still insists that the M90A is bad against this faction, you can suck my 8-gauge nuts. Use this tech and share in my joy, damn it. Okay, I got distracted. Back to John Soloing. If you find yourself getting blasted by the bots too often, it's likely because you are giving them too many angles to shoot at you with. If you let them walk at you like they're a firing squad, you're enabling every bot to have a better chance of sending you to the wall of martyrs and limiting the amount of friendly fire that they'll do to each other. Use the terrain to your advantage and avoid open areas whenever humanly possible. When it comes to objectives and base clearing, you'll want to plan your attacks against against the bots. Bots have the easiest spawners to take out since they lack shields, they stick out of the ground, and they glow like an overexcited toaster. Meaning shutting down a bot base is as simple as lining up a few eagle runs and slapping the rest with thermites or some other form of AT. Randy is also an expert at dismantling bot bases since he can pretty much handle every enemy in them on his own. My favorite way of destroying an outpost or clearing an objective is to set up Randy and charge in. Using his barrage of anger as a distraction, I can easily blow up all the important stuff and get out before he's done informing the bots of their inadequacies compared to human technology. Thank you, Randy. Bot patrols are also some of the easiest in the game to handle. All you need to do is target the little bots first to prevent a follow-up bot drop, blow up any Hulks or War Striders, and mop up the rest with your primary. They also chant while they march, so it's pretty rare to have a patrol sneak up on you unless you're just really into panic mode. War Striders deserve a special mention because when you're playing solo, they can be even more of a pain in the ass. But after spamming games filming this for y'all, I made a couple of discoveries. First is that their grenade spam is predictable. If you are running when they fire it, they will try and lead you with the spray. So a quick change in direction, either running towards them or back the way you came, means you can easily avoid it. The second is that their body cannot move. In order to aim at you, they have to adjust their feet. So circle strafe into the sides and towards them can help dodge most of the cringe. Bring at least 2 sources of AT and use these pieces of info. Do that and they become much more manageable. Factory Striders can also be a significant hurdle, but now we have plenty of new options for dealing with them quickly, making them much less of a problem if you didn't pack a recoilless. To wrap up against this faction, let's briefly go over stealth. Remember that low perception score from earlier? That is what makes the bots so fun to solo with stealth gameplay. Bots mostly rely on vision to detect you, so using the scout armor lets you get absurdly close to them without being detected. I've made plenty of videos on how to stealth against the bots, both as a solo and a team, so check those out if you're interested in more detail. But mainly, you'll want to pack mobility and base destruction into your loadout, while bringing a primary that can one-shot Devastator heads. Pack the right tools and stay out of sight for a rewarding gameplay style that pairs really well with the solo experience. But now let's get on to the bugs. Bugs have low intelligence, duh, decent power and defense stats, but they put most of their evolution points into mobility, stealth, and perception. Overwhelming swarms of fast bugs with a few tank-sized enemies mixed in can make this a tough faction to solo if you aren't prepared. Their side objectives are some of the easiest to handle, with most being vulnerable to long-range firepower, and this vulnerability saves you a lot of time on the clock. But you'll end up spending that time fighting through bug breach after bug breach unless you know how to handle the swarm. Fighting through a breach on occasion is fine, but if you can't take it out quickly, you'll end up chaining breaches together, wasting a ton of time and risking getting caught in a death spiral. Instead, you'll want to manipulate where the breaches spawn whenever you can. The strength of a bug breach, aka how many fascists crawl out of the ground, is determined by where on the map it is called in. Primary objectives and super nests have the most intense bug breaches, while ones called out in the middle of nowhere are often short and weak in nature. If you need to tackle a primary that is going to take time to complete, you can do it in one of 3 ways. The first is to get the breach called in somewhere else and lose your tail by breaking line of sight using terrain. Toss a sentry or gas effect behind you and clean up any fast bugs that make it through. Once you've lost sight of the swarm, circle back to the objective you wanted to complete and clear out all of the static enemies. The second is a less demure approach. Go right into that primary and start wrecking havoc. Kill as many of the static enemies as you can, as fast as you can, and dump some form of orbital judgment on the rest of the breach. Once you've done enough damage, lose the breach and head back to the primary. All the static enemies should be dead, and the breach bugs should have despawned, leaving you to upload your data in peace. The third is my favorite. Call down a mech and murder everything with reckless abandon. This works particularly well on super bases since you can just waltz on through, blasting anything in your way while closing all the bug holes. You only get 3 mechs per mission, but they are incredibly effective against this faction, especially in solo play because you can just brute force your way through anything. Crowd control in general is also much more important on the bugs than the other two factions. If you're not able to quickly clear patrols or dense packs of enemies, you will get stuck in that cycle of bug breaches we talked about earlier. Make sure you pack plenty of explosives, gas effects, or orbital barrages to keep the crowds at a manageable size. The final bug-specific skill you'll need as a John Solo is focusing on the right targets. But to keep me from rambling too much, refer to this handy flowchart when deciding which bugs to liberate. Stalkers, Impalers, and Hunters are the highest priority targets because of how dangerous they can be if left alone, and Hive Guard are the lowest priority target, mainly because they usually end up dying to incidental fire anyway, but they're also so slow that you can just walk away from them. They can cause chain breaches if you're stuck in the same area for too long, but you'll have either killed everything you needed to anyway, or left to do something else before they become a real issue. Alright, finally we have the Squids. Squids are the only faction with a modicum of intelligence, since they will spread out and try to envelop you with their autocracy. But they still can't use any real tactics other than trying to divide your attention between multiple threats at the same time. Their power stat is fairly high, with multiple ways to either one-shot you or trap you in a deadly melee loop. Defense is pretty low, since they lack anything with real tank armor, especially with Leviathans being out of commission, but their real strength is in their HP. The future Calamari has an absolute mountain of health that they can easily bury you under. Hell, one of their patrols is 4 flesh mobs and 2 overseers, which is a total of 25,200 health. As you can imagine, this is pretty tough to deal with when solo. On top of the spicy meatball spawn, you'll also have to contend with hundreds of voteless constantly swarming you, and elevated overseers aimbotting you down in the streets. Thankfully, we can use what we've learned against the other factions to manage their hordes and plan our assaults on their objectives. But the main thing that makes this faction a challenge while solo is the sheer amount of situational awareness it requires. You have to constantly be on the lookout for watchers, since they spawn regularly and have a massive detection radius with which to call in extra reinforcements. You'll need to track elevated overseers while dealing with the wall of meat trying to run you over. Their Tesla towers can instantly kill you if you don't notice them in time, and you'll have to tackle the occasional harvester or stingray, which can also murder you in a single hit. This is a lot to keep track of all at once, which is why it's so important to find the right ground to fight on against this faction. You'll need to use cover and cornering to funnel them into kill zones like you did against the bots, and you'll need to quickly take out their bases to avoid getting overrun like you did against the bugs. This faction, for all of its flaws, does still provide a good mix of challenges from the other two factions, even with some of its enemies feeling downright unfair to fight. But there are a few quirks we can take advantage of as a solo player. The first is that all Squid missions currently take place with at least some urban parts of the map. This means that support weapons like the MG43, EAT, and Railgun all spawn regularly on Squid maps, meaning you don't have to bring a support weapon if you'd prefer to bring more ordnance. Next, we can abuse how enemies react to sentries. For example, Terry can kill a damn near infinite amount of voteless on his own. Chucking him down behind some cover so he doesn't get harvester beamed immediately will draw everything from voteless to elevated overseers into his sphere of hatred while you get on with the rest of the mission. Gary is another good choice provided you give him some room to work. The rate of fire and spastic nature of his targeting means he's great for clearing out city blocks. Both of these sentries will give you the space to work while attracting the ire of the Inky Tide. Finally, when picking your loadout, I want y'all to remember the phrase, more DACA. This is not a faction that requires or even encourages AT support weapons. All you need is one good source of medium pen and as many liberty-spreading bullets as you can possibly carry. Guard dogs, sentries, machine guns, and high fire rate primaries are the key to success on solo ops against the Squids. They will try to overwhelm you with their wall of meat, so meet them in kind with a wall of bullets. Explosive weapons like the Purifier, Wasp Launcher, Autocannon, and Grenade Launcher can also get the job done, but I would still combine these with 1 or 2 extra bullet hoses. This is the only faction where melee weapons are actually really strong as well. You'll never find me without my sword whenever I drop into a Squid mission, because having a silent answer for voteless hordes is always going to be good. Solo play can be very rewarding. It's a great way to hone your skills against each faction while testing your mettle as a helldiver. Just don't forget that at its core, Helldivers is a social game and is best enjoyed with friends. If you've been traumatized by modern gaming and are afraid to work with others without being called a slew of names, join my Discord along with 28,000 other Helldivers committed to our ideals of cooperation, team play, and making new friends. Link is in the description. But until next time, this is Commissar Kai, signing out. You know what? I'm going to throw Gary I'm throwing him over there. I don't want him anywhere near me because I'm convinced that he will just murder me. Like, I swear, if I need to do a time lapse and just watch Gary, and I'm convinced that at some point he'll just turn around and look at me.